We would talk to people about helmets, and some of them would go, "You'll never make a helmet that folds that people will want to use." I was 50 when I started Newlane. We had no direct experience of design, manufacturing, any of the things. There were doubts every week, if not every day. Because when a folding bike emerged on the market in 1975 after Brompton, people were like laughing at it. Because they thought, I don't need a folding bike, or I'm worried about getting on a bike that folds because it will fold underneath me and I'll die. And we've got 5,000 early adopters who bought the helmet, and the partnerships we're building with Brompton are a fantastic, iconic UK British brand. And we would point at the Shard and go, well, someone built that building. Or go beyond that, if someone got to walk on the moon, it's not impossible that we can make a helmet that folds, that passes the safety test. It has to be possible.
Welcome to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a more productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopez. You can find me on LinkedIn under my own name, Pedro, Pedro Couto, Couto, Lopez, Lopes. And today's guest is someone that I admire, Dom Cotton, a former BBC sport journalist. At age 50, co-founded Newlane, a company that's redefining cycling safety with a foldable helmet designed for the modern commuter. You're going to hear how Dom pivoted from sports broadcasting to charity sector and then took the biggest leap of them all into hardware innovation with no background in designing, no engineering background, just an idea, some expertise in managing the charity sector, some experience in communications from his broadcasting days. And yet, after 7 years of persistence, he helped launch an award-winning product that is now establishing partnerships with major micromobility partners like Brompton Bikes. So what's in it for you? Whether you are rebuilding your career in midlife, or you are an aspiring founder, entrepreneur, wondering if it's too late to start, or someone simply trying to find your own voice in a noisy world, this episode is for you. It's packed with stories and strategies to inspire action. You will learn why resilience is a muscle, not a mindset, how to turn rejection and doubt into fuel, and what it means to lead with clarity, curiosity, and care. And perhaps most important of all, how simplicity in storytelling could be your greatest startup advantage. So stick with us through this episode, and you'll not only hear the origin story of a helmet that folds like a frisbee, but you will also walk away with Dom's framework for leadership and his lessons from failure. And maybe even rethink how you define success at every stage in your life. So without going on too much, you can gather this is a conversation that is more about reinvention rather than just bikes or startups. It's about taking risk when the world tells you you shouldn't. It's about showing up even when you have no blueprint, no guarantee, and sometimes no idea what's going to happen next. Because as Dom will tell you, the people who said it couldn't be done were just experts stuck in their own way of thinking. So let's get into it. Welcome, Dom, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here.
Brilliant. So you had a varied and wonderful career up to now, kind of touched upon multiple areas, and the building blocks kind of along your journey. From a BBC Sports broadcasting to sustainable travel, entrepreneur. How has these shifts come about? It's a big question, but I want to try and to understand kind of the journey.
It's a fair question, and a question that many of my friends who worked with me at the BBC and still do are asking, what on earth do you know about making products, making helmets? And it's a completely fair question. So I trained as a journalist and then went into sports broadcasting at the BBC, as you say, which I enjoyed very much, and I've always had an interest in physical activity sport. Once I worked out quite early on that I wasn't going to be good enough to play sport for a living, and most of us realised that at about the age of 15 or 16, I was quite good, and then people came up and became better.
What sport were you playing at age 15?
I was playing rugby, cricket, mainly those two, and was good at cricket. At least I thought I was, and then people became better. So I played lots of sports and thought, what's the next best thing to being a professional sports person? I thought, oh, well, broadcasting, working with sports people in the media. So
exactly.
I did set a course at quite an early age to become a sports journalist, and spent the best part of a decade doing that, which was fantastic. But I think I realized that it is quite repetitious, at least after a while,
Mm.
because sports uh, of all kinds are based around seasons,
Yeah.
and the kind of access you get to football or rugby or cricket or golfers or anyone is
Mhm.
all sort of managed and has become more managed over time. So I had a great time doing it. Worked for the BBC, worked for other broadcasters, worked for Sky, worked for ITV. Um,
Yeah.
but after a decade or so, recognized that I wanted to do something more, how can I say it without sounding a bit pompous, meaningful. So I then transitioned into the voluntary sector and worked for
Yeah,
charity.
they did. Hmm.
So working for, in some cases, sports charities, and ultimately for youth charities, charities that enabled young people in the UK who were struggling for one reason or another to access provision, support, that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So I
Yeah.
did that for another decade, in fact. Which I enjoyed very much, and it seemed to marry my communication skills that I'd learned as a broadcaster with the kind of social impact stuff that I became interested in.
Yeah.
And then
Because you initially transitioned into in your charity work, you transitioned to as a director of communications.
that's right, yes, exactly. So director of comms, and then I was a chief executive of a charity for a while, and it was mainly about fundraising and communications were the things that I became a sort of specialist in, I suppose. So I did a
Yeah.
decade in the charity sector, and then transitioned into startup land. And while I certainly don't have any career regrets, I would like to have started a business a little earlier because I was 50 when I started Newlane. And everyone's
Mhm.
gasping at how young I look. No, they're not. But so I'm 57 now. So I started my first. Well, it wasn't really my first business. I had a couple of goes earlier, but my first real attempt to start a kind of commercial enterprise was when I was with 50 with my much younger business partner who was a 25 at the time. So it's been a like a twisty turny journey, I suppose you'd call it. But I think
Yeah.
that kind of career path is more common than it used to be for lots of obvious reasons. But it
Yeah.
suits
It
me.
is.
It
It is.
suits me and
Mm.
my kind of need for challenge, variety. So I think it isn't obvious, but when I explain it in a bit of detail, it's not ridiculous that I've got to where I've got
Yeah.
to.
I think it's a fair point to say. Nowadays you don't expect people to stay in one role for their entire lives. That was probably part of, well, definitely my grandparents' generation
Mm,
in the 60s and 70s, or even before that, where you would expect people to stay at one job at one
mm,
company for the rest of their lives.
yeah.
But now it's taken is assumed that people will pivot in their careers, will because interests, purpose shifts,
Mm,
motivation changes, and so forth.
yeah.
So I think it is natural, and kind of it, and this kind of as somewhat has been done. Journalists transitioning to communication roles, and then kind of going up the career ladder, so to speak,
Mm,
in that respect. And kind of, so I wanted to first, you know, to give a bit more uh, color to your background. I want to kind of first understand a bit of the background as a journalist, as a broadcaster. Through that experience, um, kind of what were the kind of the learning blocks that you had developed or kind of you gathered along the way? Because it's quite you are on the limelight, you are constantly looking for news. There's a seasonality of of sport as well, but there is a constant need for what's new, what story is there
mm,
to go and trying to find. And that's kind of such an interesting and important as well skill to have when you transition into a communications role or in transition into new lane now.
mm.
What have you learned from that experience?
Well, I mean, I think simplicity is so important. It's probably important in absolutely everything. And I've come across a lot of other entrepreneurs who are trying to start a business, many of them in our space, in the sort of cycling and
Mhm.
mobility space. And they've got fantastic ideas. Many of them, and not all of them, but lots of them have got really great ideas. But what has happened to some of their ideas is they've become overcomplicated in the way that they explain what they're trying to do to people. So I definitely
Yeah.
think that while I was a journalist, and much of what I did was on the telly, some of it was on the radio, some of it was written, but mainly it was broadcast journalism. And you have to be simple. You have to be
Mm.
clear. To get people's attention. If you overcomplicate it, you lose their attention absolutely instantly. So I think that is something that I know well. If you write an email as the founder of a business, I'm trying to get a partner interested in what we're trying to do. I think I'm good at that. Now, people might take issue with that, but I think the skills that I learned, early on as a trainee journalist and as a journalist at the BBC, you learn how to make things simple and comprehensible, which is a skill which I think is absolutely vital. And the spoken word is important. Pitching as an entrepreneur, trying to get someone to give me some
Yeah,
investment,
of course.
the similarities between doing that and doing a report from Wimbledon about what's happened in today's tennis is that the similarities are pretty clear, I suppose. So I learned a lot about kind of simplicity of communications. I think, and the kind of people you might end up being in front of, rich investors and elite sports people are not. They have similarities as well. So I don't know. I suppose there's lots of things, but I think what I enjoy, what the difference, and you didn't ask me this, but I'll tell you anyway. The difference, what I found so frustrating, ultimately with my broadcasting career was, you're doing something very short. The opportunity to really investigate and explore wasn't always there. So
Yeah.
news journalism is by its very nature sort of bite size, and it's quick and it's in and it's out. All the stuff I did anyway, and that's even more true, I think, of sports journalism. And a lot of sports journalism, and there are people who will take issue with this, is not really journalism. It became, in my head and in my view, sort of churnalism. You're just churning it round and round and round. So I think I learned how to be succinct and clear, but I was frustrated by the kind of repetitive nature of what I did,
Hmm.
which transitioned me to communications sector, which is, again, that has its challenges. Everything has its challenges. I think I've sort of worked out that give me a decade, and I think I've not learned everything, but I become itchy. My feet get itchy, and I want to try and have a go at something else.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's,
You've done your 10,000 hours,
there we
and
go.
then
There we go. And I've realised I'm not going to be the best, so I've got to move on to something else. I mean, I think the other thing about running a business, as compared to working for a corporation like the BBC or one of the charities I work for, but
yeah,
particularly the BBC, is that you have autonomy. Now, autonomy is independence, freedom, whatever you want to call it. It can come across as a slightly scary. There's no safety net behind me, which is definitely the other side of it.
yeah,
But
exactly.
the
That's the
autonomy to
one.
dictate what my day looks like,
Hmm.
it's fantastic. I wouldn't urge everyone to do it because not everyone is suited to it, but it really suits me. That kind of self-starting kind of creativity, I suppose, is what you'd call it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I get a real buzz off the more.
You need to have some kind of acceptance that there will be risk,
Absolutely.
that there
Yeah.
is unknown that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Whereas in working for a big corporation, there is always a safety net. There's other teams to work with.
Absolutely.
Whereas in a startup, you have maybe handful of people that work with you, but you are limited in what everyone can support you with. So you
It's
kind of
true.
have to
Yeah.
really take the reins of the project, the product, and just go with it.
Yes, absolutely right. I mean, I think it's easy for me to say this now. I mean, I'm older, or more seasoned. Let's go with that, and
More
experienced.
wise.
Wise, that's a good word. But and I'm in a sort of, I'm certainly not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I have a kind of security in that I have a house. So I've done some of the kind of building blocks from a
Hmm.
kind of personal and sort of, life, sort of security point of view. So which it
Of
does
course.
give you an opportunity to go, okay, now might be the time for me to take that chance, which is quite
Yeah,
interesting because my business partner I've referred to, got Josh's name, is his name, and he is at the different stage in his life,
of course.
and he's about to become a father, and all those things. So it's interesting that you know
Oh,
that
that's a whole new challenge.
indeed, yes, absolutely.
But you already you're a father of three, so you've been
Four,
through that already.
four. I have
Four.
four now.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Okay,
just to
sorry.
further
Four.
confuse the issue. Yeah, yeah,
Brilliant. So kind of want I want to understand a little bit is that you know what is not clear to me yet is how Newlane came about, because obviously there's an interest in sports.
Mm.
But was there a moment, maybe like on a bike ride,
Yeah,
um, during a commute, when the light bulb moment came about?
there
And that's
was.
kind of want to first, before you answer that question, wait, before you answer that question, I want to first understand, which I don't know, and I wanted to be surprised by your answer, is how did bikes came into your life?
Okay, so there's a good answer to that. At least I think it's a good answer. So one of the charities I work for, I mean, I've always ridden a bike because I'm an active
Yeah.
person and bikes are things. So I had a bike when I was little, but they sort of came back into my life in a meaningful way. And this may be interesting to you and to your audience, because I know that there's a lot of people who listen who are into cycling,
Yeah.
in all levels. So I work for a charity called UK Youth in the, I think it was probably from 2010, around then anyway. I worked for a charity. And their president was a guy called Nigel Mansell, people may know as the former world motor racing champion. And an
Yeah.
really interesting guy. And he was the president of this charity. And Nigel wanted to set up a sports team and had become himself very interested in cycling. So he bankrolled a professional cycling team called Team UK Youth, who were, and I want to,
Ah,
in
interesting.
probably in the 2010 or 2011, they were the second ranked UCI British team behind Team Sky. And Magnus Backstead, again, someone might, you're right, as
Yeah.
your listeners, and you might know Maggie Backstead. He was the kind of team captain. So I was working for a charity that had a professional cycling team. It was a bit unusual. I hadn't expected this, because they're a youth charity, and the charity is a fantastic organisation that used to look after youth clubs and that kind of thing. So it was championing what was called non-formal learning. So learning
Yeah.
by doing, learning for young people who weren't necessarily equipped to be in the academic system, that kind of stuff. So that's what they did. Nigel himself had dyslexia, so he had an interest in the charity.
Of
He
course.
set this
Right.
team up. So at that point, I started doing bike rides. I got access to a
Mm.
cheap, a good value racing bike, and I did some rides. Rode from London to Paris, as many people do. Did a ride called the Alpine Challenge, which was very tough in the Pyrenees and the Alps,
Yeah.
obviously. So I did some great rides, and I thought, this is fantastic. So I sort of re-entered cycling as a fantastic way of staying fit, seeing the world, and keeping healthy generally. So that was the kind of re-engagement with cycling, and then. So I will go on and answer your question about the helmet
Yeah. Yeah.
business.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
So I was a cyclist. I'd always been a cyclist, and I've had bikes and cycled up and down mountains. But more than that, I'd cycled from my front door to my place of work a lot over the years. Very
Hmm.
much a sort of commuting cyclist. So I was riding to meet my business partner, Josh. We were working on something else, and I met him there. And I had my rucksack on my back with my helmet hanging off the back of it, as is a pretty common sight. He, meanwhile, had just got off a Santander bike, having cycled from the north side of Waterloo Bridge to the south side to meet me, and had nearly had an accident. He went, and he's not by any stretch a sort of timid human being, quite the reverse. He's a pretty positive and sort of bullish young man. So he said to me, I nearly got knocked off. I'm being told by the world, or generally speaking, to get on a higher bike in a town because it's the
Mm.
best way of staying fit, reducing carbon emissions and reducing congestion. So he got on the Santander bike, nearly had an accident, met me. He went, that was sketchy. I'm on the bike without anything to protect my head. You've got a helmet hanging off the back of your rucksack, which doesn't fit in your bag. Can we together make a product which will solve both the problem he encountered and the problem that I and many others were encountering? And that was 2018. In May 2018, we had the light bulb moment. Well, he had the idea and I agreed with him. He said, "Do you want to try and do it?" I went, "Yes, let's make a helmet." I mean, I sort of
Right.
said, I think I said, I didn't go, "Yes, I'm sure I know how to do that." I went, "Yeah, if you think it's a good idea, how are we going to do this?" And then we found a designer, and the story goes on from there. So we were both interested in kind of coming at cycling from, if you like, opposite
Different
directions. I
points.
was a
Yeah. Yeah.
seasoned sort of, rider of all sorts, commuter and up and down mountains and stuff. And he was getting into it as a means of transport.
Of course.
So he just said, "Can we make a helmet that folds?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know, maybe. And we both are of that mindset, that kind of growth entrepreneurial mindset where sure we can do that. So that's where it happened, and that it took us an awfully long time to go from that having that idea to having a product that is both manufacturable and safety certified that we could happily sell.
Yeah. And before we get into like more of the nuts and bolts of Newlane and kind of the product itself, I wanted to kind of pick on something that you just mentioned, which is the, you know, Josh and yourself. You were meeting for you were going to meet, and
Mm,
that's where the kind of that moment
yeah.
happened. And you mentioned briefly about you were working on something else.
Mm,
Now, take me back to that time. you know, you mentioned also before that you were, you had other business ideas or other businesses that came to no avail.
yeah.
And this is a story that again and again is told by startup founders. Is now you start with an idea,
Mm,
you work through it for a few years, maybe or however time, but then you realize this is not going anywhere, and you pivot to somewhere else.
mm.
And maybe the third, fourth idea, that's the $1 million idea. What, you know, can you take us back to, and what were you working on at the time that kind of was maybe
Yeah.
not, it didn't came to fruition, obviously, because otherwise we wouldn't be here talking about New Lane.
I think it's fair to say that I've had three ideas, or three
Okay.
business ideas. The first idea, which I haven't talked about, which I did after I left the BBC, before I started in earnest at the charity, in the charity sector, I worked on a business called Coach Your Kids, and it's another sports idea, and it's a good idea. There's sort of variations of it out there, but I ended up kind of bottling it. But the idea was, I at that time in my life had three. My three first kids were young, and I was an active, sporty father, trying to engage them to get into activity, sport, etc.
Yeah.
And I have done. I don't think I've done any actual coaching courses, but I've certainly been coached a lot as a young guy learning sport.
Hmm.
And I thought, I've got these three kids running around. I'm trying to corral them into getting into sport. It's really hard because the kind of the tactics, and obviously when you're their parent, the dynamic is slightly different. However, it just occurred to me that if I was finding it challenging as a middle class bloke who had the access to coaches and all the rest of it, what would other families, mothers or fathers who were trying to raise their
Hmm.
kids against, so the principle was a coaching course for parents that would enable them to get their kids active,
Right.
so coach your kids. And I did it with the Football Association, a young guy I found who helped me write a program of activity, and I did it with my local primary school and some other things around London. Good idea. It nearly kicked off. I had a couple of interested sponsors and stuff. Anyway, I ended up getting a job in the charities and leaving it behind, but it was a good idea nevertheless, I think. So that was idea one, and the second idea that I was
Mm.
involved in at the time when I met Josh on that day we've just discussed was I was working with another friend from the BBC, and we'd created a sort of an agency that was seeking to enable corporates to be more honest with their corporate social responsibility programs and make
Right.
them more directly impactful. And in fact, we were doing quite well. We had some great clients. We worked with Sotheby's, we worked with Vodafone,
Hmm.
we worked with some well-known businesses, helping them to improve or seeking to help them improve their CSR programs. So I think, therefore, I'm sort of indicating that the entrepreneurial itch was always in me. It was a case of, when do you make the jump? When do you feel secure and confident enough to do that? So my parents were kind of entrepreneurial, so I guess I had that in me from to an
Mm.
extent.
You've seen kind of
But
lived
so this is
experience of
business
what
number
it looks
three.
like. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, this is business number three, and I hope and believe that means this one will succeed. I mean, it's already succeeding to an extent. We've just got to
Yeah.
push them. But yeah. So I think
And you have taken, I mean, you have taken what, since 2018 that you started New Lane up to now. And there's through that stage there's been product development until late last year to 2024, where you officially launched the foldable helmet.
yeah.
But You have 7 years of product development.
Mm,
Um, it's a long time
it
for
is.
anyone. And I'm kind of interested in finding out, as you transition into this new project, Newlane, were there any fears and doubts along the way? Because it's a big commitment to
Yeah,
commit to
yeah. I
something
mean,
that is not yet designed. You have to develop it,
yeah,
and it will
yeah.
take a big chunk of time.
Pedro, there were doubts every week, if not every day, because as you said, we had no idea it would take us so long. Absolutely, there was a time when we used to go, it's because we don't know what we're doing. This is taking so long. I think I've kind of uh, come to terms with the challenge. I think I say this: making anything, and I don't know if you or any listeners have had experience of making a thing, being in charge of, and I mean a physical thing. Making the most simple thing is quite hard because you've got to build a tool. Physical products don't just appear; they have to be designed and produced. So which is again, it occurred to me when we started doing this that I'd never been, at least I can't recall, to a factory where things are produced, things that we use that help our lives. So making anything is quite hard. Making a new thing that no one else has made before is even harder. Making a new safety product, as we were seeking to do, was well near enough impossible. Well, we didn't think it was actually impossible, but it might have been impossible for us, particularly when you consider that me, journalist, fundraiser, Josh, salesman, brand guy, had no direct experience of design, manufacturing, any of
Hmm.
the things. So I mean, you can find people if you can afford to pay them who will help you do these things, but we are not experts. So there was doubt a
Well,
lot.
hmm.
There
But
was
there,
doubt.
there, there is that is a good. I mean, there's a good point. Are experts. There was doubt, but there you have an interesting combination with yourself and Josh. Which you just mentioned Josh, brand, sales, you communications, fundraising. That's a very important skill set in a
Yeah,
startup.
absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because that you need to communicate, you need to be able to fundraise, you need to be able to market the product, and that it is not all of it that you need. Obviously you need then the product to work,
Yeah.
a design team, R&D that needs to go into it, but all of the kind of the pieces are in the kind of pointing in the right direction
Yeah,
in
for
terms of.
sure. No, and you,
Mm,
and that's the way it feels now. Definitely, particularly now we're in the market, we're doing a good job of the sales and marketing stuff. Josh has turned out to be a really fantastic digital marketeer, and we've got some great people around us. But the other thing that I think is important and interesting for people to recognise, and not everyone will want to do this, but if you have an expert mindset, and we would talk to people about helmets, and some of them would go, I've been in the helmet game for a long time. You'll never make a helmet that folds that people will want to use. They will, not because they're horrible people, but because their experience has taught them what they think they know, and that is the way things are done. Whereas if you have a novice's mindset, you have no parameters, which slow you down, stop you. And of course, there were definitely times when we would test it for the 27th time and it would fail. We go, well, maybe we can't do this. But I've said this before, is that we used to walk around London sort of trying to work out how we're going to get to the next stage, and we would point at the Shard and go, well, someone built that building. If someone can build that building or go beyond that, if someone got to walk on the moon, it's not impossible that we can make a helmet that folds, that passes the safety test. It has to be possible. It may be that we can't raise enough money to do it or whatever. The other thing that was interesting was that even through those kind of dark moments, there was this prevailing wind behind us around micromobility. So we were seeking to create a product which would keep people safe who are getting onto two wheels, who are in towns and cities around the world. Nobody
mhm.
who's listening to this podcast or anywhere else will deny that bikes and scooters and e-bikes are growing. So the product
Yeah,
we were
for sure.
creating was going to satisfy a massively growing market. So that kind of kept us going and enabled us every now and then to speak to an understanding investor, go, look, we nearly passed this time. Have you got any more funding that you could help us with, or get a bit of flexibility? So but I think the kind of non-expert mindset. But yeah, I mean, obviously we doubted ourselves. That's nature. That's natural. I think.
Hmm. I mean, it's only, I think it's only human to to doubt yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Whoever does says that they don't doubt themselves is probably lying to themselves.
Psychopaths or liars. I think probably the answer to that question.
Yeah, for sure. But I wanted to kind of, along these 7 years, there have also been competitors,
Yeah,
also coming into your area, coming into in the foldable helmet market,
yeah,
and wanting to fundraise and to launch a product into the market, and they have come pretty close to do that.
mm,
How has this been, New Lane being faced with the active competition, as you're racing to get the product
yeah,
to the public, and you have a competitor doing the same
yeah.
with the same kind of similar concept. uh, ex- Walk me through that,
Well, I know,
that
and I
process.
can. I think I can. I mean, there is no market that I can think of that has one player within it. So the first
Mm,
thing that we need, and I believe you me, when I saw a competitor arrive in the market, we did raise our eyebrows and panic a bit. But when you slow down and go, hang on, every single market in the world for anything has more than there's certainly more than one bike manufacturer. We can agree
mm,
on that. Too many,
yeah,
one well, you might argue, but there are plenty of people trying to do the same thing.
yeah.
No one single product, however good it is, will satisfy every single consumer. Apple might think they're going to get everyone to buy the iPhone, but there's plenty of Android phones out there. So the point is, there is always space for different versions.
Hmm.
And you know, I'd also say that some of the competitors that come into the market, and there is really, in my view, only one competitor, possibly two, because there's a very cool product which I think we saw when we went to Rollair. I think I met you at Rollair, the Ventete, which is a folding helmet, which is a
Mm,
superb piece of innovation, but it is not going to become a mainstream product, at least not in its current iteration, because it's too expensive. There are two helmets that I deem to be direct competitors. One is the Kloska, which is a Spanish business. One is the Plixi, which is made by a company called Overade, which is a French business. And they're both great. They both have a market. They both sell. The Kloska's been around for a long time. Ours is different. It does the same thing or seeks to solve the same problem, but it is sufficiently different and distinctive that we believe it has a market. And we're proving that with our early sales, our initial sales. So there are other things we're seeking to do to try and differentiate our product. We're working, and we are going to have become, I should say, the only folding product of any kind. And
mm,
many of your listeners will know the company MIPS, Multi-Directional Impact Protection System, a Swedish ingredient brand in helmet space. Work with 150 helmet brands from motorbikes to skiing and all points in between, including cycling. We have become the only folding product of any kind to integrate their world-renowned safety enhanced system. So
yeah.
it's not that I think.
That's a first, and it's
Well, it's first. It's first, and
a massive, massive
it
milestone for the
will
business.
it will change the game for us now. Not everybody, by the way, will want a folding helmet. There's many people, and we again, when you dig into the cycling fraternity or the cycling community, I should say,
Mm.
I was at Eurobike recently. I think maybe you were there too, right?
No, I wasn't there. I wasn't there.
Well, I went this time for the first time, and our helmet was on the MIP stand because they were promoting their partnership with us, which is great. And GCN, Global Cycling Network's kind of social media team went out, digging around. They found our helmet, they videoed it,
Yeah.
flipped it, put it on their Instagram. I think it's got 1.5 million views, and the majority of people, and I'm saying this because I'm now robust enough to deal with this, go, why would you need a helmet that does that? Now, that is a question I'm quite happy people asking because not everybody does. So we've created a product which is absolutely game changing for some people and totally irrelevant for others. And it takes a
Exactly.
long time to become comfortable enough that there's another one trying to do it and people won't want it.
Mm.
But because we've been doing it for so long, and because we're selling well and working with interesting sector partners, Brompton, Forest, these kinds of businesses who are taking
Yeah.
us seriously. Because when a folding bike emerged on the market in 1975 after Brompton, people were like laughing at it because they thought, I don't need a folding bike, or I'm worried about getting on a bike that folds because it will fold underneath me and I'll die, which of course is obviously nonsense. So, I think we've become over that time robust. Our product is robust, by the way, but we've become robust as well because, we've stood firm and kind of, and had enough positivity in the kind of roller coaster of yes, no, up, down to go, let's stay firm, hold your nerve, and let's get it in the market and see.
You've seen the product pass through different milestones. But on a personal side, you go through the motions. Not maybe that's the wrong way of putting it. You go through ups and downs
Yeah.
through these along these on any startup journey, and there needs to be and kind of an ingrained resiliences. You mentioned your family were
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, so you have the lived experience of what it looked like, and you had that, you mentioned as well earlier on that you had that bug to get something started of your own accord.
Mm.
But what I'm interested in find out is, how do you cultivate that? How do you, as an entrepreneur, as a person starting a business, personally define resilience so that you can, on a day-to-day basis, just be able to move forward and not be, in the case, for instance, of that social media clip from GCN, with comments going left, right, and center about what is the point of this. You might feel overwhelmed and just like, I'm crushed. I can't deal with this.
Mm.
That doesn't affect you.
It definitely affects me, but what this is an anecdote, and it's not related to me, but there was an actor who some people might know. He's a guy called Alfred Molina. He's a well-known. He's English, but I think he's of South American background. I don't know. Anyway, he's an actor, and it was a quote that I heard him say, and he said he was on in a show in the West End, and he went, I did the same performance, and I got a review from one of the theatre critics going 1 star, and I got another one saying 5 star. And all he did, he said, I stopped reading reviews, but I cut both of them out and stuck them on my fridge and went 1 star, 5 star, same thing. What can I do? And I've had other experiences that are the same. The truth is that if one social media comment about our helmet being a waste of time is trumped by one customer spending £90 buying our helmet and saying that it's changed the way that they commute. Which one of those should I listen to? And it doesn't mean I always listen to. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and I think resilience. I think age does kind of make you more resilient because you've been through the downs, so you know the ups are coming, and vice versa. I could psychologically assess myself. Probably not the best person to do that, but my resilience probably came from my early childhood when my mum and dad left to go and work in another country, and I was biffed off to school when I was quite young, and I became kind of independent and resilient at an early age. I don't know whether I wouldn't suggest that that's the way that everyone should encourage children to become
Well, that
resilient,
that
but it's
definitely is a definitive kind of a very defining moment.
It either
Because
makes
I
or
mean,
breaks you.
now that you mentioned, it's like you are having to rely on yourself, and kind
Yeah,
of that sticks with you because you don't have kind of the parents have
yeah.
left you so to your own devices, not literally,
No,
but
but
you
I was
have
eight. I was
taken
eight
up on
at the time,
yourself.
so I was quite young. So I think that has had a.
Mm.
I mean, it's not all positive, I don't suppose, and it's certainly not something that I would ever recommend. And I never did it to my own children. But there's a kind of toughness, and I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I don't think I'm always tough by any means, but certainly it's demonstrated itself in an effective way with the development of the business and the helmet, definitely.
I mean, and how does that transition into leadership? Because from that side where having the resilience to focus on the positives rather than the negatives, does that then transition into leadership in
Mm.
how that how you communicate with your team? How does that affect then working in a startup that where things can be quite volatile?
Mm, mm. You know what? Because you were kind enough to send me the questions, some of the thoughts anyway we'll be talking about. So I had a thought about the leadership thing, and I think there are sort of 3 things. Resilience we've talked about. I think there are the other 2 things that I think are really important, and I've worked with some great people in my career and been led by them. And I think trust is such an important. It sounds a bit sort of silly, but I think if you work with other people in your business, you need to trust them to do the thing that you've employed them to do. The kind of opposite of
Yeah.
micromanagement, I suppose. So get good people. Make sure you get good people who believe in what you're doing, and the chemistry is appropriate, and then trust them to do the thing that you've asked them to do. That's really, to me, that's probably number one almost in leadership. I mean, the other thing, and again, it's an overused phrase, particularly in startup land, but passion is important. Even if, when I'm talking to our factory, who are brilliant, based in Birmingham, brilliant people, and they have their own things to do, but I seek to avoid being defeated or downhearted when engaging with them, because I don't want them to think that the people who are trying to make this product and get it into the market are worried or low. So I don't lie, but I'm,
Yeah.
remain passionate, give people the freedom to do what you've employed them to do, and, be resilient yourself. I think those are the kinds of things I think are probably, they're certainly the things that I think enable me to lead our business. I think also the other thing I would say, and this is a much talked about topic in startup discussions, is that I certainly would never have done it on my own.
Mhm.
Always, and it's easy to say, finding a co-founder or a business partner, whatever you want to call them, someone who you trust and believe in,
Yeah.
and who is the bit of a yin to your yang. That we have many similarities, Josh and I, but he and I have been able to support, and not always, but almost always, as a dovetail. I'm up, he's down, vice versa.
Mhm.
So that's the sort of thing. I think if I was going to start a business, anyone said to me, I'm going to start a business, I would say, find someone to do it with.
That's a very good point, and it's extremely important in finding a group of people that can work with you or together to get
Yeah.
to consensus, get to deliver something project, whatever it is. And there is the saying that if you want to do it fast, do it alone. But if you want to go far, do it with someone else,
I
or,
like
or
it.
do it
Yeah.
together with a team. And and I'm curious about the relationship that you have with Josh, because he obviously is much younger than you, and you are joint CEOs, or you're co-founders of Newlane,
Mm.
and it is not often that you see joint CEOs. And I'm kind of curious to understand how this dynamic kind of has helped you or hindered you. How has this worked through the years? Because it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, uh, uh, um, I think we are, broadly speaking, similar at the beginning of the business, and we now have, and I'll talk about this in a second. We have very distinct responsibilities within the business, and that
Okay.
has worked much better, I think, than we. Well, it wasn't obvious to start with, but I'll get to that in a second. But we also were lucky enough. One of our early investors was a guy called Ben Friedman. He's a superstar. He's a lovely guy, and he's a Brompton rider who believes in us and believes in our business. And he said to us, "Look, I'll invest in your company, but I want you to have some business coaching with me first, or as a kind of kind of condition of the investment. We had
Yeah.
to commit to 6 months of coaching, which we did with
Right.
Ben, and Ben's brilliant, and he helped us because we were at that point, we were, I don't know, 4 years away from launching or something, a long way away, and we were just two guys trying to trying to make something.
Mm.
It felt a bit pretentious, but he said to us, "I want you to create values for your business." We're like, well, that's what corporations do. That's what big businesses who have stupid words on walls do. And it felt a bit, you know what I mean? It felt a bit,
Yeah.
who are
Yeah.
we? Okay, well, if you say so, Ben, and we probably only said yes because he was going to invest, and if we didn't, he wouldn't invest. So it probably was as simple as that. Anyway, it quite quickly became clear to us that this was a really useful exercise to go through. So we created 4 values for the business, and what that did was it made Josh and I realize that our values were very similar, were aligned, I suppose you would say.
So that's your personal values rather than New Lane values.
Well, I think it's how you behave, I think is probably so.
Okay.
So it
Right.
can be how the business behaves, but how we behave. So, and
Mm.
I will tell you what they are now: personal, proactive, was the first
Mhm.
one. As you need to be moving, otherwise this thing's
Yeah,
not going to happen. So that's kind of obvious. Upfront, I guess, is a byword for honesty. Be clear, don't hide stuff, and kind of keep things from other people. Be curious about, inquisitive, look around and be caring. Consider what your impact is on the people you're talking to or the world you're kind of
exactly.
trying to operate in. And we very quickly worked out that those were really important. Positive, upfront, curious, and caring. It sounds a bit grandiose for two people who are trying to start a business, but nevertheless, it clarified a lot of things. I would argue that there was more value to that than I ever thought. And what it's helped us realize is that the people, we haven't always got it right, but when you work with someone, either an investor or manufacturer, design, anything,
Yeah,
you can kind of overlay those values and go, are these people going to, you don't necessarily ask them directly, but think about those things when you say, yes, let's work together. So that was really helpful. And there have been times when we got it wrong, with two very clear times. I don't need to go into the details, but there were two times when we very clearly worked with people who kind of crossed our values, if you like. So that's an important thing. I found that is super helpful. And in relation to Josh and I, he is, like I say, 25 years younger than me. He's, and this is not, I'm not being self-deprecating. I'm quite not immature, but I haven't been, despite being 57, haven't been downtrodden. I'm not that cynical. Maybe I think it's, and Josh has a kind of slightly older head on him. Not always, but he's so. I think we probably ultimately are a little closer in age. But what has happened since we've
okay.
been running the business in an outward-facing way is that I am in charge of product and operations, and Josh is in charge of sales and marketing. Now, of course, we're both doing everything, and we both do the fundraising bit, and we both work with a finance guy to help out the numbers. But that divide is really neat and it works. I love my product. I love the thing that I didn't think I would love. I'm a journalist, but I also might in another life have been a design engineer because I find it really interesting. And I didn't know that. And he's really good at digital marketing. He's a 31-year-old, so he's a digital native or whatever the word is.
Yeah,
He's always had a phone in his hand, but he's really good at it. He's really good at it. So that's a happy, we couldn't have known that. I think when we met in 2018, if he'd said, "Are you going to be good at making things?" and I said, "Are you going to be good at selling things?" it might not have been as obvious. But we've kind of harnessed the kind of our respective strengths in what is currently a very positive way.
and just kind of for context for the people listening and for myself as well. Now that we kind of have explored more the relationship and the kind of the collaboration that you have going together. How did the how did you two meet?
So we were working on this other business. So he was the sales guy for the social
Okay.
impact agency I was talking about. So I was with a mate from the
Ah, okay,
BBC,
right.
and Josh came on board as our kind of outward facing sales guy. And I think we both looked at each other and went, this other business is not necessarily working out, because the truth is we fell out with my mate and our mate. Again, it was about values, I think, on honesty. Anyway, and he said, "Should we do this?" So that was it. So 2018. Yeah, I mean, I said barely knew the guy. I certainly didn't know him as well as I do now. I didn't know him very well, but it was when you meet someone and you go quite quickly,
Yeah,
go, this guy could be my friend, and then
yeah. There's an intuition there as well.
there is, I think,
Yeah.
and I mean, sometimes
Hmm.
we get it wrong, but certainly
Of
in
course. I
relation
mean,
to him,
you have to trust your gut. You have to trust your gut
yeah,
sometimes.
and have a we don't always get on perfectly, but we're pretty much in tune. The yin yang thing it does seem to work most of the time.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you're talking there is in describing is really, I guess through work going on that mentorship program or business coaching program is understanding the values, but more importantly, understanding how you two can work together. And because you both bring different expertise from different areas, and that kind of is really just without stepping on each other's toes, is just understanding, okay, how can we fit this together without bringing down everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to bring now to kind of, you know, more about the purpose of Newlane. You mentioned about the values that you kind of worked out through that business coaching program. But there is a clear potential with the micromobility space, and kind of as it is going to continually grow. There is kind of almost immediate need to provide the structure products that are going to fill that the kind of the gap that's already emerging.
Yeah.
The micromobility space, commuting in cities, making the last mile trips in a very environmentally friendly way,
Yeah.
through bikes. What do you see the role of Newlane in the evolving micromobility space?
Well, I think what's occurred to us is that we are not um, helmet fascists. We don't want everyone to have a helmet. We're definitely not of the opinion that people must, and mandating helmet use is not something that I adhere to at all. And it's happened in other parts of the world. And the Australian model says that you force people to wear a helmet or give them a ticket, and they just won't ride a bike, which is obviously totally with the business we set up
Counterproductive, yeah.
was exactly that's we're not bothered about that. So it isn't legislative change. It's there are people, I know there are because I speak to them, and we've spoken to them a lot over the years, who will not ride a bike if they cannot protect themselves when they're doing it. Now, there are also people who say that we should separate infrastructure tomorrow and have bike lanes everywhere and ban cars. Well, that's not going to happen anytime soon, despite the progress that's being made. So, our I strongly believe that innovations, our helmet being one of them, need to sit alongside policy change and infrastructure separation. Because I would prefer, so going back to this, so there are people who won't ride a bike in central London and many other cities around the world because they are scared. Now, I don't want to turn cycling, and many of the Dutch cycling advocates will tell me off and do so on LinkedIn sometimes for suggesting that cycling is a scary activity because then you stop people wanting to do it. I mean, in some cases, it is a scary activity, or at least it
I
can be
mean,
if a
yeah, you
driver
just
behaves like an
need to
idiot.
go out cycling in London and to quickly realize it is scary.
It can be scary, but I do not want to present, you must wrap yourself in steel and all sorts to, otherwise, because that's also the wrong idea, wrong message to send. What we want to do, our product wants to be something that enables people to make a choice. I can, if I look out the window and it's cloudy like it is today, and I go, I'm going to central London and the forecast says it might rain, I'll stick a folding umbrella in my bag in case it hoses down with rain and I need to stop getting wet. So I think the proxy that I have, rather than it being an opportunity to change policy and force everyone to put a helmet on, it's the sort of thing you can stick in your bag alongside your laptop and whatever else you carry around and go, oh, I'm going to jump on a line bike from, Westminster to Chancery Lane, whatever it is, and I can stick my helmet because it's in my bag, like my other things. So that is absolutely the kind of aspiration we are seeking to enable people to have a choice to protect themselves if they go around a town or city on two wheels. And micromobility is growing, as we said earlier on. There's no one would even seeks to dispute that, and it's a good thing. But if, as is beginning to happen, lots of accidents crop up, some people are going to go, don't get on a line bike. So we want to help, in many ways, help anyone who's promoting a two-wheeled vehicle to plug into something which will stop the negative PR around people smashing their heads on pavements because they're drunk and they don't know how to ride a line bike properly. So we are just one of a myriad of innovations. The kind of e-bikes are obviously fantastic and flying along, particularly in Central Europe. The bike conversion kits are very cool. I've got a normal bike. Can I turn it into an e-bike? There's lots of innovation going on, loads and loads of innovation. And I'm an advocate of scooters. I recognise, particularly in this country, that people are circumspect about what that will lead to, and lunatics flying down and having taken the speed limiters off. So it has to be managed. But we have to do all we can to enable people to feel confident to ride a bike or a scooter or an e-bike in a town or a city. Our little bit of the jigsaw is exactly that. It's an opportunity to have a bit of choice without having a helmet clanking around on the back of your bag. So I think that's it.
It
That's
presents with the practical choice to a person that wants just to go from A to B in a more practical way.
we are part of the ecosystem, and Andrew, our product's great. It's passed the safety test. Lots of people like it. We can improve it because every product business looks to improve it. We're going to put MIPS in it, improvement. We might, in a year's time, when we've got enough money to do it, we might iterate and make version 2, which is smaller, lighter, and even, easier to fold, whatever. We will continue iterating. But I think going back to what we said about competition, the Kloska is a great product. The Overade's a cool product as well. They're great products, and they are been in the market longer. I think ours looks like a bike helmet more than theirs do. Now, some people will go, "Well, I don't care." So so we have a product which I think is the sort of thing people would expect to put on their heads if they get on a bike or scooter, that can enable some people to have the flexibility, convenience, and safety that they currently don't have access to.
Yeah, I mean, and during that kind of you touched upon a few things like the practicality, how well it looks on you, the safety that and the kind of trust that is inherent into the product through, for instance, association with MIPS, or the partnership with MIPS. And as any startup, I'd imagine that what was the research process to get to the final product?
Great question. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on, you touched briefly about walking in the streets of London and wondering, how can we make a product that it's compact and protects ourselves. But did you get to speak with people riding through on Boris bikes, Lime bikes?
We did it. So we got a small grant from Innovate UK in 2019, I think it was. So after we came up with the idea, we applied for, I think we got 20 grand from Innovate UK, which was great. And that, in many ways, was the sort of catalyst moment. We go, okay, they take it seriously. We've got a small few quid. So what we did with that, we engaged in, because it was a Innovate UK and the Design Council had a pot of money into which you could bid. And they said you have to engage in what they call human-centered design, which is a grand way of describing, ask people who might buy the product if what they need from that product.
Exactly.
Sounds so
Consumer
clever.
research.
There we go. So we did that. We did 3 workshops in Waterloo with regular, sometimes and maybe bike riders, and said to them, if we made a helmet that was foldable, would you use it? And they all said, yeah, if it's safety certified, I probably would. And we said, what are the other features the product needs to have? And they said, it's not just about volume reduction. It doesn't need to go from 100% to 50%. What the other thing that it needs to do is it needs to fold to a shape that is convenient to put into a bag. Hence, us going from a 3/4 sphere to a sort of flat frisbee, which is essentially fits nice and easily into a bag. So we did a proper piece of consumer research. We did a wider online, digital survey. So we did quite a lot of research, and we spoke to some brands about it, and asked them what it needs to do, what it needs to look like. And I think the truth is that even though there are other competitors and they've been in the market for a long time, it surprised us, and still does, that people who are in the market looking at all the things that they get advertised for, most people haven't got a clue that folding helmets exist. It's still very much a niche product. Now, what we are seeking to do, much in the same way that Brompton sought to make folding bikes mainstream, we want to make a folding helmet acceptable. We don't want everyone to have one, but the idea that you can fold a helmet and not compromise its integrity is something that we're very keen to sort of push. So we recognise that underneath there is an initial sort of, how can a helmet that folds be safe? How can it do the job?
Yeah, that's a good point, because you have you have the kind of the ingrained image in people's heads of what the helmet looks like, kind of mushroom style on top of your head, and then you show them a helmet that you can flip and it flat packs into your backpack, and that presents, in my eyes, a huge trust problem.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you convince people that your product that you can take apart and put it back together is safe to use?
I mean, Pedro, the honest truth
how
is,
do you breach that?
No. It's a good point. Some people will never go for it. Many people, and I'm certainly one of them, will trust that it's been through the certification process. I mean, in many ways, our story 6 years of product development confirms that we weren't messing about. We couldn't have got product liability insurance if we hadn't got the certification. The certification took us I mean, not. I mean, we made so many changes to the initial product. There's a LinkedIn post, probably my most engaged piece of content. I haven't got it here. I haven't got it with me. But the product we made, we had a product in 2019, which, broadly speaking, looks the same as the product we have now. But believe you me, and when we had it, we thought, oh, we're nearly there. We're nearly there. This is going to work. And the amount of times we had to iterate on the kind of core concept is ridiculous. So you're right. There are some people who probably will never believe that a folding product can do the job. I think I am beyond confident that what we've produced is as safe as a non-folding helmet. I mean, I would stake my life on it, I suppose, in as much as we know what we've done to make it get to where it's got to. And I think an association with someone like MIPS really elevates us and gives us, because the education piece is something new enters the market. People need to be told it's okay. So and we've got 5,000 early adopters who bought the helmet, and the partnerships we're building with, and I don't want to jump the gun, but Brompton are a fantastic, iconic UK British brand that sells a product which people love around the world. We will this year or next be working with them in a meaningful way. Because I think the other thing that I'd say
is that what do you when you mention meaningful way? Is that a partnership with Brompton Bike Hire Scheme
well, I don't. I
to
mean, and I'm not
do a
being.
joint partnership there?
Yeah, I'm not being clever. We do stuff with them anyway, and I know the guys who run that very well. I think we'll go beyond that, and it's very much to be confirmed. So I don't want to, I'm not being
Okay,
clandestine.
right.
We just don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet. But I think that the fact that we've been doing things so long means that not everybody. So we can just simply go, no, this has taken us 6 years. When we speak to anybody and say this helmet didn't arrive overnight, we put our we've nearly ran out of money. We raised lots of money, and the kind of iteration process is part of the education. But not everyone will go for it. I don't think that, but I don't think we need
I mean,
everyone.
it's. I think it's part of is a natural process of launching a product, let alone launching a product that can be so divisive. You don't want to please 100% of the population. Is not realistic.
But helmets are kind of divisive anyway. I don't think I fully appreciated the kind of debate around whether you should or shouldn't wear a helmet. And there are plenty of riders who would like never to wear a helmet, and that's absolutely their prerogative. But I think that there are many, many people for whom our product serves a very core need. And if your aspiration and mine, anyone listening to this wants to, I'm imagining most people who listen to your podcast are advocates of cycling as a thing in the world. I think that what we've created will support more people to decide to do it, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, you do want to. I mean, I think that's where you are onto something. Is that you trying to tap into the potential of you call the 90% of the population that are not cycling enthusiasts, but don't necessarily have any regard to cycling as a sport, but see the micromobility space, see a higher scheme for bikes to move around in cities as a great way to get fitter, be healthier, get to that destination faster. And if they have the choice of being safer through a helmet like yours, even better. And that's kind of
It is kind of simple as that. I mean, I think the market's massive in micromobility market, and I think we can corner a part of it which will turn our business into a profit-making and successful enterprise. But there's more work to be done on that. But
yeah. You have been quite successful at. Well, well, okay. Let me caveat that. Through my research, uh, what I know is that you have been quite successful at raising over £1 million in fundraising money to support the business. I've also know, and I'm curious to find out a bit more. What is the kind of what are the next steps in terms of fundraising? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but there has been talks with Stephen Bartlett to get to work with his company to get more fundraising. What is that process
Yeah,
going?
so we're not getting any money from his fund. We came close, but we didn't get any money from them. I mean, there are not loads, but there are quite a lot of people out there who look at businesses like ours. We're now obviously post revenue and we're generating money. So we've spoken to not everybody by any means. We've spoken to loads and loads and loads of people about investment. We've raised 1.7 million quid today, and we probably need a little bit more. And there are different ways. Once you're a revenue generating business, you can borrow money as opposed to try and get people to invest. And there are grants sometimes, which again we're looking into as well. I think our track record is such that we will have more options. It isn't a very easy time to raise money at the moment because of the sort of global instability that's been sort of perpetuated in lots of ways. American policy and all that, making things more challenging. But I think generally speaking, we're now getting inbound approaches from venture capitalists who look at what we're doing and go, maybe there's something in this. So the fundraising journey continues. I don't know whether it'll ever stop. The other thing that is interesting to me is that the change in the way, and I don't know, I suspect you'll have spoken to people who work in maybe the European, but certainly the UK cycling sector and the sort of wholesale retail sector. What we've begun to realize is that it is a complicated and challenging, very challenging to create a product like we've created and try to sell it through shops in the old-fashioned corner bike shop sort of way. At the moment, it is anyway, to stay profitable. So I guess this is a point I wanted to make because we've recognized, and I've spoken to some other startup brands who make not helmets, but sort of bike complementary, bike adjacent products. And there's one founder who really said an interesting thing to me. He said, your direct to consumer stuff, using Amazon if you have to, we have recently been accepted onto Decathlon's marketplace as well. So big marketplaces that are respected and trusted. And our own digital marketing is the way in which we will sell and move toward profitability. Because if we have to rely on retailers and distributors, I have nothing against any of them. They're brilliant. There's some great shops and distribution businesses in this country. I know there, and other places. It's very hard to make a product business profitable because you make it for X and you sell it for Y, and in the chain, and you're like, okay, so I've now got to sell 10 times what I projected to sell to become profitable or to make any money. So that's another thing that I think I didn't realize. That's one of the things that I wish I'd known before I started this, understanding that value chain or that margin chain, which is fascinating.
But isn't there an argument to that where going through distributors, going through the retailer network, that you get to be in front of more customers?
Yeah, you do. Scale is the reason why people do it. I think consumers are getting much more used to e-commerce purchases, even for clothes or things you put on your body and sending it back. We have a very robust returns policy and so on, should anyone get it and not like it. But I think it's true. And I think our approach at the moment anyway, the honest truth is, Pedro, is that I cannot afford a distribution deal. Otherwise, we don't make anything. We have to sell our product for less than it costs us to make it. And that might be a function of the fact we're making it in Birmingham. That's not going to work, is it? Even I know that, but we make our product in the UK and we're proud of that and we want to keep it here. So, we can go direct to trade. We have signed up a German retailer quite recently who like our product, and that's one less link in the chain, which allows you to hold on to some of your margin. But we're learning that thing, having learned fundraising, having learned product development, having learned safety certifications. The new thing is, and we're learning digital marketing, having learned that, we're now learning the kind of wholesale value chain, and it's fascinating. But I think there are times when I've gone, does that mean it's impossible? And then you go, no, it's not impossible. You just have to do it differently, and that is kind of the resilience. That's the number one of resilience. It's not a no. It's a work around it, solve the problem.
Exactly. Approach the problem, see it from different sides so that you don't get just bogged down into one, like an outcome, but see it through different perspectives. I mean, and that's one of the things that I wanted to get to in a more personal note is that you have learned, I'm sure, many lessons, and you have been telling us some of these lessons that you have been learning along the journey. But what would what do you know now that you would wish that you knew when you started a new lane?
That whole thing about the value chain cycling, the industry, that's one of those points, I guess, would be that. But I think it is, and I suppose the thing is, you say I wish I'd known it then rather than learn it now. I might not have done it if I had, and that's a much used cliche. If I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. But I am delighted I did it. I'm still very motivated by what we've done. So, but I think I did not understand, and it still it marvels. I marvel at the fact that I didn't understand this, how hard it is to make a physical thing. I just didn't understand it. So there are people who come up with ideas, and I don't know everybody's doing it, but people who think, we go through our lives, our weekly existences, and we go, wouldn't it be great if I had this or that? You know, and people are. That's not an uncommon thing for people to say or do. But the challenge of turning your idea into the real thing is, you know, it's crazy how complicated it is. It's crazy. So you can design an idea, you can do a sketch on a piece of paper, and there's something called DFMA, which I didn't know about, which is called Design for Manufacture and Assembly. So you can make a product that you can produce one of, and it might even pass a safety test, but it possibly won't. But you've got to design it in such a way that there's a scalability to the production process. So there's that, and the other thing, which is particularly specific to my area, helmets, is that I didn't know, and I probably wouldn't have done it if I had known this, that you can't certify a helmet unless it comes off the tools, the machines that it's unless it's produced in the way that your production product is. What that means is you have to build a set of tools which costs six figures and more to create a product which then gets you certified before you know. Do you understand my conundrum?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah. I
we have,
understand. I
we have, we
understand.
have
So
to commit a six-figure sum to a set of steel tools to produce a product which we didn't know which we knew wasn't yet safe and might never be safe.
so yeah, you have to commit to a production, to all the molds, all the machinery, to create a product that then needs to go through all the safety accreditation.
I mean, there are things I would have done in a different order, but that fact remains. You can't certify unless it's come off the production tools. Well, okay, that means we've got to build the production tools. But is it safe? I don't know yet because we haven't done it. That loop is
Yeah, that's a
nightmarish. It's
huge
a bit like
commitment.
so which means that, and I forget how many anecdotes I've got. We met a guy who worked for Specialized. Everyone knows Specialized, the big bike, and they make helmets as well. He was their soft goods guy and their helmet guy. Really great guy. And he said to us, we met him in a trade show in Germany a couple of years ago, and he said, the day that you get this certified, it will go from being an expensive idea, £1 million or whatever it was at the time, to being a really cheap innovation. Not cheap, as a good value for money. So the day that you cross over from being an unsafe product to a certified product, you have done a remarkable amount of activity for £1 million. And a bigger business would have taken a lot longer to do that because, well, overheads and whatever, I don't know, processes and all the rest of it. We were able to be the scrappy.
Yeah, well, it just proves that, I mean, what is known already by many business people and entrepreneurs, that being the startup, you are much more agility. You are able to move faster and kind of beat larger corporations to release the product.
We didn't we were able to kind of do things wrong, but in doing things wrong, we found out things that other businesses wouldn't have taken a chance to find out, I think. So yeah, so there's lots of. Yeah, so definitely, I would say that if I'd known more about the manufacturing process, and we had good people around us, but it was for us to kind of, oh, the penny dropped, like, oh my god.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm interested now, now that you have the kind of the the agility of being a startup has got you where you are now, with the product launched in market, with the initial consumers buying the product. Now you have the world, so to speak, with the eyes on you. Brands, bigger corporations are looking at what you've done and thinking, right, they've done this. Okay, how can we compete with them in this sector? How are you future proofing the business?
Well, we've got patents, so we've got intellectual property on our particular mechanism for folding a helmet. I don't know, and I think it's fair to say there aren't that many ways in which you can fold a helmet. There are limited. I mean, the other two, the Kloska collapses in it or folds in a different way, so there are limitations around what can be done. I mean, I've met some big businesses. We work with Halfords, and they did say to us, yes, we're on their marketplace. And their a product guy, he's a great guy. He said, if we sell lots of these, we're going to make our own. I was like, what? His point was that if the market is proven to be there, my bosses will tell me, or someone will tell me to develop another one. I think probably if that is the case, and we do prove that to be true, then there may be an opportunity for us to talk to them about buying us or something. That's a possibility. I think it's, I don't know what point we get to when that we'll see about that. So we've got intellectual property. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we would consider. For sure we would, because the kind of the end game for us is to have our product be on more heads. And the byproduct of that is that we'll have a successful business. But we do recognize without any doubt that really to become scalable, we need a partner. And the Brompton conversation is one. We've talked to lots of other businesses about how we might partner with them to grow. We sort of recognize that we can't, however brilliant Josh is at digital marketing, or any of us are at what we do, we need more firepower. But you can collaborate with brands and grow in lots of different ways. And I think one thing that I haven't really mentioned, which is important to say, is that we are a lifestyle product, not a cycling product. And again, it sounds a bit pretentious to say it, but we don't want to be a core cycling product, which means that we can align ourselves with Brompton and cycling businesses, and they would be a lifestyle product as well. But we can also align ourselves with there's a company called Mouse, MOUS, who do phone cases. They do more than that now. And Josh is talking to them about the idea that we collaborate with them. They are seeking to reach the same kinds of consumers as we are. Can we do a collaboration which will drive sales, profile, and all the rest of it? So there's lots of ways in which we can protect ourselves, both kind of through paperwork, but also through brand associations with existing brands that have power already, if you see what I mean. So I think you can't afford to be too timid. And I don't know whether in the R&D labs of big helmet companies they're currently plotting not our downfall, plotting their own version, which would be better. Possibly, I don't know. I mean, I've been to meet quite a lot of them, and I think they're yet to be persuaded that the folding helmet market is significant enough for them to want to spend money on it. I know they're wrong now. Particularly when you add.
Well, they still need to see that proof that there is enough revenue for them to kind of want to develop a competing product. And also, what you just described is that, I guess, as the business grows, as a startup, whether you will need more capital, you'll need to get partnerships with other brands that kind of, through brand association, through capital, elevate your potential for growth. And that speaks to the fact that as a startup, inherently you need to be aggressive in your strategy to grow, because if you get complacent, if you start retreating into maybe just holding on to patents that will expire.
For sure. But no, I mean, the honest truth is, Pedro, is I would say that we would expect to be in a meaningful commercial partnership, and of course that can mean lots of things, with a bigger brand, whoever that may be, in 2 or 3 years' time. And it maybe happen before that. And that doesn't have to be they buy us or whatever, but it just means that, we become, a co-branded product sharing proposition within a portfolio of a bigger company. And that feels to me eminently viable, even though I know the cycling sector is coming out of this post-COVID fog, and it's still complicated, and overproduction of helmets means that lots of them are burned in the fire. All these things I know to be true, but I still believe that what we've created is interesting to other brands. I know it is, because they approach us sometimes. So that is probably, in terms of our kind of direction of travel, our next growth stage will become, we need to raise a bit more money, go gangbusters and get into Europe, and work alongside other businesses who have similar missions to us, and there are lots of them. But it doesn't have to be an on the nose cycling business necessarily. It can be someone who's a lifestyle urban
In
business.
your interest to be a lifestyle option rather than pigeonhole yourself into the cycling world. And I wanted to. Well, I mean, I will definitely watch the journey unfold as a curious onlooker to see your progress. Um, is there for our listeners, that you know perhaps are in a position like you were as a journalist, as a broadcaster, thinking, well, there needs to be other ways of living a more purposeful, meaningful life rather than what I'm currently do. Is there one thing that you would think you could share with them? That allows them to take a leap forward.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether I'm a risk taker. I don't know. It doesn't feel like I am, but I suppose. Well, for me, it's always been about believing in the possibilities, even if you recognise that they come with risk. And the sort of, I guess you said it earlier on. Trust your gut, trust your judgment. Um, I mean, I certainly felt myself. I think I said this to someone a while back. I'd rather have tried lots of things and been quite good at them than only tried one thing and become a specialist. So that's my mindset. So I think if you have, and I don't want to encourage people to be irresponsible, because we've got to pay bills and look after our children and all the rest of it. You can't be cavalier necessarily and end up on the streets. But I mean, I've been calculated in my risk taking, but I've always been willing to take a risk and believed in my ability to tidy up the mess that I make by taking that risk if it goes wrong. So I think for me, not taking the risk is a much bigger risk than taking it. And that's, again, I'm sure I've heard many more famous people than me say something similar. Stephen Bartlett says the biggest risk of all is not taking the risk or something. So I guess I think, but the heart of that is having sort of belief in yourself. And I also think interestingly, this has been true of the people in my friends, I suppose. Family, maybe they support you. My wife's been super supportive, but my friends have been much more, I want to say impressed. Yeah, impressed, or much more like, oh, fair play. You might go, I'm going to do this crazy risk taking thing, and people are just going to go, what the hell's he doing? But certainly the people around me, anyway, are much more generous in their response to the choices, the chances you might say you're going to take. Good friends will encourage you to take calculated risks or do that. But you can only be who you are. I think if you start having an idea, certainly it was true of me, start having an idea that you want to get out of this place. I couldn't stop. Then I became sort of mildly fixated on, okay, when do I get out? How do I get out? I wasn't able to deny it. So
Yeah, that is. There's a few few important bits from just that important piece of information you just shared with us. Is just that you do need to have the belief in yourself. If that's you just maybe need to look inward and kind of or look to the people that will support you or believe in you. I mean, yeah, if you have friends that laugh at your face about crazy ideas that you have, it might not help you in making that decision. But if you surround yourself with people that are supportive, then that will definitely help you to get.
I think my age might have helped, because I think being older, certainly for me, I don't know. I mean, obviously, as I said, Josh is younger, but being older, you're kind of at the point where you go, I'm not going to swear, but not sod it all. I don't, but you're kind of going, as I say, life. I mean, very much in the middle of my life now, probably past the middle. But opportunity to experience different things is something that I think we should all seek out. That is my view. I find it hard to believe that anyone disputes that view, but that's what I see as being the kind of the stuff of life, isn't it? Have a go at something.
Exactly, you only live once and you have to make the most of it. And it doesn't have to be through risk taking. It doesn't have to be starting a new startup or starting to create something from scratch. It can just be going for a 5K run, or
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It manifests itself in many ways. Absolutely right.
trying new things and just embracing the new experiences and see where that might lead you. Because not everyone will be a startup founder.
No, 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 no. Not, I wouldn't advise everyone should be. And I know, you know what? I was also, Pedro, is that, we've done pretty well. I mean, we've got to this point anyway. We're still going, but I am also not. I'm optimistic, but I am a long way from being smug about where we've got to, because, and I do say this to any of my mates who and we've got friends who live in other countries. I talk to them every once in a while, and they say, "How's it going?" I say, "It's going fine," but it could all be gone in 6 months' time. And that's not because I'm being negative. I just recognise that, we might not raise any more money. The customers might dry up. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think I recognise that is a possibility, because nobody knows, right? And we are
Yeah,
trying
you
something
need
new.
to account for the risks. If you're not thinking about the potential risks, then you're maybe even lying to yourself. You're of the potential of the downfall or the potential of things. You need to be able to plan 5 years into the future and see, well, these are the risks that are possible to happen, and this is what the direction I want to go, and kind of trying to mitigate the risks along the way, because there are things that are outside of your control, in macroeconomic factors, for instance, and that will affect your business, and you won't have any way of kind of wriggling yourself out of that. you know um, and so I wanted now to bring kind of now the more personal note, as we have been doing it most of the podcast. But it's a question I ask all of my guests. It is, what does success look like to you?
I mean, it's kind of simple. I think that sort of, and again, these are slightly sort of trite words, but freedom is the thing that drives me. And I talked about it before with the autonomy of running my own business. I have the freedom to decide, well, what time I get up, what time I go to bed, and what I do in between those 2 points. So I would say that success for me will allow me to, and it isn't driven by money, but it is facilitated with having enough money. So I would like more people to be using my product. I would like folding helmets to be a kind of mainstream thing, or like, yeah, of course you can fold a helmet, just in the same way that bikes became accepted as foldable things. Um, and I mean, I think I would like to be working with a bigger enterprise to get our product to more people within 2 or 3 years. So success, and that might mean I'm still in the business or I'm not. I don't know, but I'm certainly not. My ego's not sufficiently large that I feel like I need my name or my association with our products to be the thing that people know when they buy one. Do you know what I mean? If it becomes a different brand, but so long as the product that we've spent blood, sweat, tears, and time on, it becomes a sort of useful thing in people's lives, then that's successful. I would like to make some money out of it, because as most startup founders will say, is that we haven't paid ourselves very much while we've been doing this. Now, I mean, and those are the breaks when you start a business. You can't afford to pay yourself proper money. But, I went back to my salary of when I was 30, 35 when I started this business. And so a bit more money would be helpful, certainly. But I'm also conscious that I'm relatively blessed in that sense. But I certainly don't need loads of money, but I need a bit more money, and I'd like more people to be using our product.
I think that's kind of, you mentioned earlier on about the freedom aspect, and that I think that's will relate to many people, because freedom, it it's is not is not something that is, you can very easily be shackled by a job, by responsibilities of life that you set yourself upon yourself, and kind of you having the choice to, or the freedom to make certain choices, is can be a privilege. It's not everyone can afford that.
No, 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 and I accept that it's a privilege, but it's a direction that I've always thought to go in. Not because I think I should be able to do what I want in a kind of spoiled brat kind of way, just because, to me that's, the freedom to make, the freedom to choose to do what I do. That does seem, and it is. You're absolutely right. There are many millions, billions of people on this planet who don't get anywhere near that. So I'm already pretty privileged. But I suppose you could say that of most people who live in the developed world in this part of Europe. I don't know, but doesn't always feel like it. But it's true. So the big picture stuff. But I think freedom is the freedom to choose what I do. Is probably it's as simple as that, really. I guess that's what it is. The freedom, and that can be facilitated by lots of things. So.
I wanted now to, bring you to the kind of the tradition I started on the podcast. It's where every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. And the question that was left for you is the following: what was your most epic adventure on a bike?
My most epic adventure on a bike. That's a great question. Um, I mean, the thing about it is that I mean, I think I talked about it earlier on. I've done some endurance riding. I don't think I was very good at it, but anyway, I did it. And it's impossible for me not to talk about this 4-day stage event that I did in the Alps called the Alpine Challenge. And there was 120 of us or something. I don't know. But it was the thing that I mean, I've done the Tour of Flight, but these are organised events. I don't know whether they're adventures, but certainly for me they were because I
I
was
mean,
right.
adventure is wherever you define it.
Well, it was pretty damn adventurous. I found it. Some of the climbs were really hardcore, and some of the
Yeah, in
descents.
the Pyrenees, it would be. Yeah.
I did not find it very easy. I guess probably I'm gonna go with the Etap because I did the Etap up the Tourmalet and the Otakam afterwards, which were both in this year's tour. And it's the single best sporting event I've ever done. But it was the hardest thing. When you go round a corner, lots of your listeners will have been on much more these kind of rides than I have. But you go around a corner at 11%, and you're thinking, and it tells you that you've got a little corner coming, and the next you go, great, I'm coming to the end of this little incline, this little climb, and it's 12% as you turn the corner. And I'm not built. I'm not a skinny racing snake, perhaps like you might be. So I enjoy climbing. I enjoy it. I just do it slowly. So I found that in one sense, absolutely exhausting, but I was so proud of myself when I finished it. So probably of all the sporting things I've done, isn't it from an endurance point of view?
So, kind of now it comes to to the point where it's your turn to leave a question to my next guest. What question would you like to leave to them?
Let me think about that. Gosh, I didn't think about that. My question would be: do you think in your life the point will come when you give up your car and only use two wheels forms of transport? And if not, why not?
Wow, that's a very good question. It's definitely it allows you to kind of take a moment to reflect on that, because it's a very and it will depend as well on the where geographically where people live, because someone living in the Netherlands might say, well, I already do that, or
Well, I thought about doing it myself, and then you go, kids going to foot, all the, and it, so anyway. And in London, I did have my car stolen a few years ago, and I did briefly not replace it, and you can kind of manage. It's just, I think it's laziness that gets the better of us. But
brilliant. Dom, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I think we really pulled the curtain into the operations, intricacies of how Newlane was built in your journey, and kind of the ups, the struggles, but also the highs and the rewards that you have experienced along the way.
I've enjoyed it.
And I think it's quite revealing, and I think it will be very relatable to many people that work in any industry, but most particularly in the cycle industry. So thanks for your time, and thanks for sharing your story.
Absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
That was Dom Cotton, reminding us that it's never too late to change lanes or invent one entirely. From reporting on the world's biggest sporting events to reshaping how we move through cities, Dom's story is a masterclass in reinvention, resilience, and purpose driven entrepreneurship. He didn't start out in product design, he wasn't an engineer, but what he had was conviction, curiosity, and the courage to stay in the game, even when the odds and experts said it couldn't be done. And maybe that's your takeaway for today. You don't have to know everything, and you just have to care deeply enough to keep going. So, if this conversation got you thinking about how cycling can shift your mindset, or maybe even your career path, share it with two friends, two colleagues who would love to hear about Dom's experience and journey. Maybe they are dreaming about starting something new. Maybe they need to hear that it's never too late to start something. Either way, you can be the person to start that spark. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure to follow Ride Success wherever you listen to the podcast. Whether it is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, just follow and subscribe. Until next time, Ride Success.